let's go on to some of the midweek action from across the Championship then, and we'll kick things off with Leeds United, who made 8 wins on the bounce and road by beating Middlesbrough 3-1. What a game this was, Justin, and of course, what a huge win for Leeds United, Justin.
Yeah, quite significant as well, because they've come up against a few teams at Ellen Road where they've not really been dealt any blows, whereas Middlesbrough, really had a go. And I think it was a game where they, at least got asked a lot of questions, and I think they answered them. And I think this was a sort of game where you go, okay, promotion credibility here. It's increasing, with performances like this. I thought it was a really good performance. And, there's a lot of individuals who were on it, Tanaka, Daniel James, winning Onto from the get-go. Yeah, some really, really top performances in this game. And as I say, a really important 3 points, not only because it's 3 points, but also they've come up against a team who had a real go and asked them a lot of questions, and they stood to that test.
Yeah, Middlesbrough did give them a right good go, didn't they? And it had a potential to be a difficult evening for Leeds because Middlesbrough have been in such great form recently and were clearly up for the fight. We're fans of expected goals on this podcast, aren't we, Justin? It was interesting to see what Opta had it down as, because they said Leeds won by 1.7 to 0.4 in terms of XG, which I don't think properly reflected the game at all, and is certainly an example of the flaws of XG, I suppose. But look, Leeds were great and soaked up a lot of what Borough threw at them. But Borough had some great spells in this game where they looked like much the better side. And just before it was 2-1, actually, I thought if any team was going to score next, it was Middlesbrough. There was one moment from Ben Doak where he was in acres of space in the box, but just could not get the ball out from under his feet and somehow messed it up. And, of course, got to give a mention to a penalty shout for Middlesbrough in the first half, Justin. Joe Rodon challenging Riley McGree. I've seen a bit of both sides of the fence with this particular call. Do you think it was a penalty or not?
I think, again, we've got to talk about consistency, haven't we? I think it's a penalty because Joe Rodon kicks through Riley McGree, and that ultimately takes him down, and that's contact. That being said, do you want all types of contact being a foul? It's one of those. But if I'm the referee, I give that as a penalty. But also, if I'm a Middlesbrough fan, I feel a huge sense of injustice. If I'm a Leeds fan, I go, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think when you look at the replay, it's a stonewaller. And if this was the Premier League, VAR would give that every day of the week.
Yeah.
But in real time, when you're the referee, it's quite a difficult one because you'd be easily mistaken for thinking Rodon's got a touch on the ball. But when you see the replay, you can tell he's quite clearly not. I think it's a bad call. I can understand why it's not given, but still a bad call. It's one of them really where I put my body in two sides of the fence or whatever. But what a huge win this could be for Leeds, Justin. Fellow promotion contenders who were well up for this one, and they very professionally dealt with it. And it's now 8 wins on the bounce at Ellen Road. They've won the most points at home in the Championship. And I think the thing that's got to be pointed out here, Justin, they've done that having faced Sheffield United, Burnley and Middlesbrough already this season. Yes, I know they lost to Burnley, but the point still stands. They've got this phenomenal record at home, having played nearly all of the most difficult sides already, Justin.
Yeah, it is impressive. It's quite staggering how good their home record goes back, really. I was looking at the numbers, and they've only lost 6 games at Ellen Road in their last 3 Championship seasons, or 2 and a bit if you include when you're including this one. So, that's quite an astonishing feat to do. The fact that they don't lose many games at Ellen Road. I think there's obviously a reason. I think that the crowd really does play into it. I think that Leeds philosophy, built under the likes of Marcelo Bielsa, where Ellen Road does become a fortress and not just a hunting ground for clubs to come and pick up points and laugh at Leeds as they leave. It's not like that anymore. It's a horrible place to go. You're up against it. You really are up against it. And that's down to the strength of the squad, but also the mentality the coaches have been instilling into the players. And that home record, I think, is a real catalyst for them being promotion contenders, title contenders once again. You've got to be
contenders,
really...
Justin, are they? They're the more favourite. Well, they are favourites with the bookies, but I feel like contenders is too low a bar.
No, I think I'll throw contenders because I think the Championship throws a lot of a lot of twists and turns as the season goes on. So, yeah, I think there's 3 or 4 in the mix, aren't they? But like I was saying, I think you've got to be really, really good to get a result at Ellen Road. Portsmouth on the opening day, they grabbed a point. They were absolutely hammered in terms of chances. Burnley, when they won, they were hammered in terms of chances. You've got to run your luck, and that's what teams you have to do. And again, that's down to the quality of the performances at home.
Yeah, well, I do agree that Ellen Road it's always been such a strength for Leeds anyway, isn't it? I think we all know that by now. It's the same last season. And they actually had a better home record than Leicester last season. I think the atmosphere is one of the big reasons why. It's a pretty obvious one, and I think people will probably accuse us of pandering to Leeds fans, but I genuinely think that does make such a huge difference because they can almost suck the ball into the net at times, can't they? And the defensive record at Ellen Road is just sublime, with 3 goals conceded in their last 10 games. Bizarrely, Portsmouth scored 3 on the opening day, didn't they? Which we'll leave out from that particular stat because it doesn't fit the narrative. But, the only thing that's really letting Leeds down is their results away from Ellen Road, because they've only won 1 of their last 6 away games. They can sort that out, then Leeds will piss the Championship this season, no matter how well the other teams do. So that's all Leeds have to do at this stage, because Ellen Road is that's certainly not a difficult hunting ground for them at this stage, is it? Let's go to Middlesbrough, Justin. We will talk more about Leeds shortly, I will add, before we just go on to Middlesbrough. But Michael Carrick, I don't think he'll be overly disappointed with this. They faced Burnley and Leeds in the space of a few days, Justin, and gone toe-to-toe with them. I think he'll take a lot of confidence from that, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the performances in both the games will tell him that the club and the team's going in the right direction. I thought Leeds were relentless at times, but I thought for Middlesbrough to stay in the game for as long as they did, it is credit to them and credit to that mentality instilled in Carrick. I think if you go 1-0 down at Ellen Road, the game can get away from you very quickly. It can. We've seen it time and time again over the past few weeks how easy Leeds can make it, but Borough never allowed Leeds to settle. Was it a vintage Middlesbrough performance? No, but like you said, they've come up against Burnley and Leeds in the last 2 games, and they've come out with relatively intact despite a draw and a defeat, which isn't fantastic, but it's all about the performances against teams like that. And if you can put in a good shift and hope for the best, and your quality's on show, then that's what you're coming for. That's what you're hoping for. It wasn't the case here. I thought Leeds had more quality, and that showed.
I think Middlesbrough have certainly had enough chances to win both those games. I mean, they definitely did against Burnley, and if the luck fell their way on this one, then they could have very well got an amazing result at Ellen Road. A point would have been a good result for them, and they definitely did enough to get a point in my view, but they could have also won it if Ben Doak managed to sort his feet out, or the referee put the whistle to his lips for that penalty shot that we were talking about just a second ago. So it's fine margins, really, but I will not be disappointed if I was Michael Carrick. They've got 3 very winnable games coming up, and then they've got Burnley again at the end of the month. But they've come through this, I think, looking pretty good and convincing that they are a promotion contender this season, as I've been saying for several weeks now. And I think these 2 games have been prime examples of that. So, yeah, that's why Michael Carrick, I think, will be pretty satisfied, or at least content with these 2 games, despite not winning either of them. Let's go to Millwall, where Neil Harris lost his final game at the Den as Millwall manager. They were beaten 1-0 by Sheffield United. By no means a walk in the park for the Blades. Justin, Millwall gave them a bloody good game here, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I think it was actually a really positive performance from Millwall, probably indicative of why I think a new manager might struggle coming in, but we can talk about that in a moment. The fact that Millwall managed to create some decent chances, Tanganga and George Seville both hit the post. Ivanovic had a great chance, but blazed over the bar when in the box. And I think despite all the possession that Sheffield United had, I did think they struggled to really, really hurt Millwall other than the Brewster goal. There was good amount of chances by Sheffield United, but as I say, I think Millwall proved that it is a difficult place to go to, the Den, in a midweek game, night game, etc. And I think they'll take a lot of Yeah, a lot of positivity coming out of that game, and I think Sheffield United will take a lot of positivity as well. Because obviously they got the 3 points, didn't play at the best, and they take 3 points and clean sheet back up to Sheffield.
Yeah, Millwall had a fair few chances, hit the post through Jaffet Tanganga, but you're absolutely right, Sheffield United not at their best. Chris Wilder even admitted he gave a couple of the younger players what he called rockets at half-time to liven them up. And then in the blink of an eye, Michael Cooper has the ball in the Sheffield United goal, passes it to Jack Robinson, who plays a stunning crossfield ball to Gustavo Hamer. He squares it to Ryan Brewster, who puts it into an empty net. 3 passes from their own box in 8 seconds, and they've scored. And that's all it takes for teams with as much quality as Sheffield United to punish a team at this level. And Ryan Brewster, Justin, very much the forgotten man at Sheffield United, isn't he? But popping up with his first goal in 2 years. Very nice.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You can see the relief on him. Just wanted to talk about the touch from Gus Hamer, by the way, from the Jack Robinson crossfield pass. It was superb, and that is, you know, if it's a crap touch, there's no way Gus Hamer can take that in his stride, and maybe it's not a goal. So that touch from Gus Hamer was just unreal. But yeah, Ryan Brewster, first goal in 2 years. You could see the relief on him. You know, he was delighted. You also, I think that, you know, what was quite touching at the end of the game was the appreciation from the travelling fans, which was really warming. Yeah, he's had a lot of injuries. He cost a lot of money. There's a lot of hype around him early on in his career. He's still only 24. So it's one of those, you know, if you can keep the injuries at bay and not be impacted by them, then there's goals there. But, you know, what a moment for him.
Yeah, the sad thing is with Ryan Brewster, when I think of him nowadays, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that video of Barry Bannon where Sheffield Wednesday got promoted and they're in a party of some sorts. Barry Bannon gets on the mic and says, "Ryan Brewster, you're absolutely honking, son." And that's the first thing that comes to mind for me when I think of Ryan Brewster nowadays. And that just goes to show how much bad luck he's had really with injuries. I think this season, or so far this season, is one of his best spells of avoiding injury in 4 years from what I've seen looking at his availability. But you're right, he's still only 24, which seems mad really, doesn't it? So hopefully this is a sign of things to come with him. We have said that before with him though, so I wouldn't want to put too much hope in that. But if he can stay fit and contribute to Sheffield United, then I think that's all the Blades will ask for this season, because I think with Tyrese Campbell getting injured as well, they could do with someone like him stepping up, and it'll be one hell of a story if he does make a big return for the Blades. But this win, Justin, keeps Sheffield United top of the table, and when you look at the table, you may notice a bit of a gap has opened up between Sheffield United and Leeds. 3 points separating Leeds in second and Burnley in third. Now, that's not massive at the moment, but how likely do you think it is that we see a scenario where Sheffield United and Leeds separate themselves from the rest of the pack? We don't want that to happen. I think it's worth pointing out, because we want a promotion race. But I fear it may be quite likely, Justin.
This is the month where you can separate yourselves from the pack. You've got a lot of games in December. You go into it in good form. You come out of it in good form, and you can hit January strong. Leeds have got players coming back from injury, like Ethan Ampadu. Sheffield United will have a chance to bolster the squad with new investment in January. And I think with the amount of games you've got this month, you've got to win ugly as well. And I think Sheffield United did that. Leeds sort of did it, or they took blows to the chin, if you like. It's a gauntlet to the rest of the division, and I think the likelihood of that happening, I think, is quite likely, because I think by most these two do have a lot of quality. I do think Sheffield United squad probably getting overlooked somewhat, in the sense that there are good players in it, but there's a lot of youngsters that have been bled into that first team by Chris Wilder, who deserves a lot of credit for doing so. But I don't think Sheffield United had the strongest squad out of that top three. I think it's Burnley and Leeds. And way down is Sheffield United. I'm not saying Sheffield United squad is not very good, but to say it's on par with Leeds and Burnley, I think is quite a stretch compared to the talent that both of those teams have got compared to the Blades. So yeah, it's I think it's very likely. Defensively, they're great, and they manage games very well. Both sides do.
I'm not sure I agree with Sheffield United being quite a way back, but I think it is quite clear that these are the two standout teams in the division by a fair distance. You've got Burnley, Middlesbrough and Sunderland, who are the next group in that regard. I'd say for me, Middlesbrough are probably looking the next strongest currently, but they're 10 points behind Leeds already. It shows how their slow starters really cost them. I mean, it is worth reminding people that genuine automatic promotion races have been quite rare in the Championship in recent years. Last season was actually a bit of an anomaly, and even that didn't go down to the final day, really. But before that, it was usually two teams in the top two for most of the season. One of them would have a bit of a wobble, but got it over the line fairly comfortably in the end. And I fear that could be the same this season because, look, these two are clearly the better teams in this division, not just in terms of points, but in terms of performances as well. And this isn't a slight on them. If they do go up, they'll obviously have deserved to go up, but just as a neutral, we don't really want to see that, do we? But I fear right now that just in terms of pure consistency, quality and results, these two look like they may end up cutting the rest of the division adrift, which would be a shame, but I feel like that's quite likely at the moment. A disappointing final game at the Den for Neil Harris, Justin. I say final game. I reckon there's a chance he has at least one more game in charge of Millwall in his managerial career, I would say. His final game will be at Middlesbrough this weekend. Still very odd for a manager to take charge of two games after announcing he'll leave, but I suppose it shows this was ended fairly amicably. We did speak about it at length in our emergency pod on Tuesday after the news broke, so if you want our thoughts on the Harris departure, go and listen to that. But one thing we didn't discuss, Justin, is who would you like to see as the next Millwall manager? Steve Cooper, Mark Robins and Kevin Muscat are the early favourites with the bookies. I think Cooper and Robbins are just going to be the automatic favourites for every Championship job until one of them takes one, won't they? But Kevin Muscat, come on, Justin, I'd love to see that. I think he's going to get linked with every Millwall job for the rest of eternity until he finally goes there, isn't he? But back to my question, Justin, who do you fancy for the gig?
Who do I fancy for the gig? I mean, I saw Matt Bloomfield was favourites at one point as well, and I think he is an interesting option. I think he is taking Wickham into a different direction that Gareth Ainsworth had Wickham playing, and I think that's almost similar to how Neil Harris has set Millwall up, if you like. Defensive-minded boss. Although I do think Neil Harris has released the shackles a little bit this season. A defensive-minded boss who is then transitioning into a more front foot football, if you like. And I think that job probably suits Matt Bloomfield than it would have the Coventry job that he was previously linked with. So I think that would be my sensible option. I think Mark Robins and Steve Cooper at this point are maybe unrealistic because I think both managers do need a break. Steve Cooper only had a short span of time out from between Nottingham Forest and Leicester. Obviously, it didn't end very well at Leicester. And then Mark Robins, long time at Coventry, deserves, I said it the other week, deserves a holiday, doesn't he? I think someone like Matt Bloomfield, where they're a young coach or younger coach, they're on the up in terms of their League One trajectory, and they're going to play a style of football when he's got experience of taking over from a manager with a hardy philosophy and transitioning that. I think that's probably a better bet, and I think Matt Bloomfield ticks those boxes, but there'll be other managers that do that.
Well, one name I saw suggested, which I thought was interesting, was Michael Scabala at Lincoln, doing a cracking job there on a pretty limited budget. His style of play is basically Millwall nailed on, direct, heavy emphasis on set pieces. I think that'd be quite a smart move. Who knows where they'll go with this appointment, though, because I would assume, and also like to think, that because this has been semi-initiated by Millwall, that they do have someone or some names in mind, and I guess we'll see how quickly it takes for them to make their move, because it's a big decision, Justin, for a lot of the reasons we spoke about in Tuesday's emergency pod, but also because this will be Millwall's fourth permanent manager in 14 months. Before that, they only had 5 managers in 16 years. So it's a big one, because a lot of people have always regarded Millwall as a stable club, and that previous statement sort of challenges it a bit, doesn't it? Could it be Jose Mourinho, Justin? He did say in October, while speaking to Sky Sports, that the next job he wanted to be a relegation-threatened side in England. And he would go on to say Millwall because the Den is nearby to his home in London. I say make it happen, Justin.
Give it a couple of more weeks and Millwall could be relegation threatened. As I mentioned on Tuesday, if things don't particularly go well post Neil Harris, Millwall could get sucked into that relegation fight. So it might pique Jose Mourinho's interest. I do feel like Turkey's perfect for him. Fenerbahce's perfect for him. It just seems like the heat of the volatility of supporters and the football and the league really does suit him.
It's the same at the Den, though, mate. Come on.
It is. But I feel like Millwall fans have got sort of frustrated at things over the last sort of 12 months or so, and I feel like they've dampened down a little bit, maybe gone a bit soft. Maybe someone like Jose Mourinho can come in and...
I don't think you want to poke that there,
mate. Maybe Jose Mourinho coming in can really ruffle feathers. It would be perfect. So it is a match made in heaven. It really is.
I would love to see it. And if it's right next door to where he lives, then he don't have far to commute, does he? So yeah, I would love to see it happen. Anyway, Justin, let's take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about the pressure increasing on Wayne Rooney and another poor result for Cardiff City. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. We're having a wander through some of the midweek action from across the Championship. But before that, just in 5 in 10, name 5 countries in Africa.
Burkina Faso, Guinea-Bissau, South Africa, Ghana, Cameroon.
He's done it, ladies and gents. When you said Burkina Faso, I was a bit worried, but we got there in the end.
That was such a random shout to come out with first, isn't it? I don't know why that was in my head.
It just happens, mate. That's how 5 in 10 works. I mean, that's the first one you've got in a while as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been a while. Been a few weeks.
It really has. So it's good to get that monkey off the back, I suppose, Peachy. Let's go back to some of the action from the midweek then, and we'll go to Swansea City, who have increased the pressure on Wayne Rooney after winning 2-1 away at Plymouth. And Justin, this is a bad result for the future of Wazza, isn't it?
It's not great. It's frustrating to have to sort of continue to talk about this because the club's clearly made certain commitments to him by bringing in Mike Phelan. But I think based on his performance alone, again, it's just really poor. And you do have to talk about the quality of the squad. The quality of the squad isn't great. But at the same time, the way they're starting games is dreadful. It was a better performance in the second half, because I know Plymouth fans will tell us that they improved in the second half. But how often have we spoke about the first half performance being absolutely garbage? How often has Wayne Rooney spoke about that himself? It feels like it's been a factor all season. It was the case here. They were so poor. Swansea were allowed to dominate the game in that first half, and they used that as a real building platform to get going. When you are already a poor team, you diminish your chances of getting a result when your team and players are only switched on for 45 minutes. That isn't just down to Wayne Rooney. That responsibility does sit with the players as well. But ultimately, this has been a continued trend for Plymouth, and it's not easing up at all.
Well, keep in mind the reports we were talking about this time last week. This was supposedly one of the 2 games Wayne Rooney had to save his job. Now, he was spared a bit more time by their game against Oxford being postponed at the weekend. But now it means the 2 games he had to save his job are this one and Sheffield United away this coming weekend. So good luck, Wayne. He really could have done with a result here, and he didn't get it. And Swansea fully deserved it. Plymouth did make it a bit uncomfortable towards the end, but it was too late by that point, really. And keep in mind, Plymouth absolutely useless away from home. So they're massively relying on results at home park. And when they're not happening for Wayne Rooney, the question's got to be asked where the results are going to come from. So it's not looking great for Wazza. Bizarrely though, Justin, you did just mention this earlier on. We had the news come in after we finished recording on Sunday that former Manchester United number 2 Mike Phelan has been appointed assistant manager. Now, that's interesting because if a manager is close to being sacked, as has been reported, why would you let him appoint a new assistant? I don't think you would you? So is this a sign that he's not actually as close to the sack as suggested? I'm confused, Justin.
Yeah, I think the 2-game thing is probably, I don't think it's probably as accurate as maybe we think. I think that sort of commitment, is quite significant. I can't, results and performances wise, I can't see Rooney surviving the next few weeks. But as you said, appointing Mike Phelan as assistant manager, it just throws you in a completely different direction. It really, really does. So, I do think maybe Rooney might get until the new year, but should he? No.
Do you not think it's like when David Brent hired a new secretary in the office just as they're about to make a load of redundancies? It's got that same kind of vibe for me. So yeah, strange one, but you're right. Mike Phelan's a very well regarded number 2 in football, isn't he? And if the evidence is anything to go off, Rooney does seem quite reliant on who his number 2 is. So they should be seen as a good thing. What it means for Wayne Rooney's future, I honestly don't have a clue, because I'm like you. Surely, if things continue the way they are, he hasn't got long left. But I guess we'll see. A good win for Swansea, though. Justin, Plymouth aren't great, but plenty of teams have struggled at home park this season. We shouldn't forget Swansea have become only the second team to win there this season. So actually a really good win for Luke Williams' side. And they're now up to 9th. And Justin, I've got to say, I've been very impressed with Swansea recently. I know we've by and large marked them down as a firm mid-table side for this season, and that's probably still where they're most likely to finish. But I think, say it quietly, they could be a bit of a dark horse actually this season, a dark swan, if you will, a black swan. What I'm trying to say is they're the Natalie Portman of the Championship, Justin. But seriously, I think they're actually a very good side, and based off what I've seen of them recently, I think there's potential for a lot more to come. So I'm revising my opinion on them a bit, and now I think they could perhaps have a chance of sneaking a playoff place this season. Just now, I wouldn't want to rule it out, is what I'll definitely say. What do you think?
Do I think a playoff place is realistic for Swansea this season? Are they a dark horse, dark swan, if you like? I'm going to put my foot down and say no. I'm going to disagree with you. And I think results and performances have been largely quite positive, but I think in-game management has been a big issue for Luke Williams' side. They have had a significant drop-offs in games that have allowed opposition to really start to ramp up the pressure. We saw it with Plymouth here. We saw it with Derby against the other week as well. I'm not saying it can't be possible, but that has to be eradicated. That has to be eradicated, because luckily for Swansea, both Plymouth and Derby didn't have the quality to punish Swansea, whereas other teams will. It's not a major issue, but I think that can hold them back from reaching their potential this season. There are a lot of positives for Swansea. I really, really do believe that. And I think they will be a playoff side eventually, whether it's a skirmish this season or it's a bona fide contender next season. It will happen under Luke Williams. They are going in the right direction. But there's a problem with in-game management at the moment. I think it's going to hold them back if they don't squash that. You're ruling out every team from finishing in the playoffs so far this season. Every time I suggest someone to you, you always just rule them out. I don't think, as I say, I still think it's probably more likely the scenario that they do finish mid-table. But I think they've got a bigger chance than you're suggesting, Justin. And I definitely want to rule it out. I think you've got 5 of the top 6 who are looking like a pretty good bet to be there come the end of the season. I think that last spot is well up for grabs for quite a few teams, and I'd say Swansea are looking increasingly capable. I've always said I think their strongest 11 is stronger than mid-table. My concerns before were with how thin their squad is, but this game against Plymouth was an example of how it might not actually be as thin as feared, because they were able to drop Ronald, Franco and Vapotnik to the bench. And one of the reasons for that is because Miles Peart-Harris, a young winger on loan from Brentford, has come in and looked a really tidy player. But keep in mind, they've got January to come. So if they're still in touch come then, I think they could surprise people, particularly with Luke Williams, who I really like as a manager. Justin, anything to say on that? Yeah. I think that's one thing that's going to help them is they get to January and they can potentially bring in 1 or 2 more faces. Is it going to be an overhaul? No. This is a really unrealistic thing to a lot of fans, by the way. They expect a lot of movement in January and incomings in January. It's not going to happen. It really isn't going to happen. It's too expensive to do business. No one wants to let their good players go, and no one wants shit players. So signing players in January is very difficult.
I don't think Swansea need a whole lot, though, Justin.
No, 1 or 2 faces. It could be a couple of youngsters. I think I'm just speaking broadly across the Championship there. And I think Swansea, 1 or 2 young players on loan, probably the most realistic scenario for them while they continue a transition this season. But in terms of competing with teams in the top 6, you said, if you've got Burnley, Sunderland, Blackburn, West Brom currently in the top 6, you've got Middlesbrough. You've spoken glowingly about Norwich. There are likes of Watford as well who are in the conversation. I think Swansea aren't quite at that level yet, and I think even with Norwich probably have a stronger squad than the likes of Swansea. And then you've got Coventry under Lampard, but I imagine the expectation is to get in around the top 6 this season. That's going to be a difficult thing to do.
I'm not sure about Coventry, but I think there's quite a few horses in that race. And I think Swansea are definitely in the conversation as far as I'm concerned. Let's stay in South Wales, Justin, because Cardiff have now won just 2 points from their last 6 games after being beaten 2-0 at home by Preston. This was Omar Reetz's first game as the permanent manager after being confirmed for the remainder of the season last week. Not a great way to celebrate this game, Justin.
No, it wasn't a good performance. I mean, the initial positives we had when he took over as caretaker manager was the quality and quantity of chances they were creating. That's dropped significantly, but worryingly as well in this game, they were so poor in possession, so poor. And I think that is, a real alarm bell. I'm not saying Omar Reece is close to losing his job, but when the results and performances, when the performances are starting to drop along with the results, it becomes a very uncomfortable position for a manager who's only got a contract until the end of the season. And with the volatility of the Cardiff ownership, it becomes very precarious for Omar Reece. So things have got to improve, because this was a winnable game for Cardiff, or certainly results wise, and they didn't match Preston at all. Preston were, I wouldn't say largely the better team, but they certainly looked more convincing than Cardiff did in this game.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Preston did make 2 goal line clearances. One of them from Jordan Story was pretty remarkable, actually. But I don't think that properly reflects the game, because Cardiff were poor. And the 2 Preston goals came from very avoidable errors by their 2 centre-backs, and they've proven to be costly, haven't they? Reitzer admitted afterwards that the players were nowhere near it, and it was men against boys. And, I mean, this was no disrespect to them, but it's Preston, a side who have been in a similar position to Cardiff for most of this season and hadn't won away yet prior to this game. So it just makes the result look even worse. And I've got to say, the alarm bells are ringing for me with Cardiff, Justin. I'm past the point of increasingly concerned. I'm now just downright concerned.
Yeah, you're DEFCON 5, haven't you? You've triggered the alarms. Well, you probably triggered those years ago, actually. They've never gone away. Like the Cardiff Cold War. But it's just hard. It's just really hard to put a finger on Cardiff, because they took so long to make the decision with Omar Reitzer, and him getting the permanent manager's job almost resets expectations a little bit. But they're currently in the bottom 3. They're looking like they can't generate any consistency whatsoever. You got teams like QPR, Portsmouth are starting to pick up results. Obviously Derby drawing away at Burnley will buoy them. It's a bad time to hit a bad run of form, and they're going to be teams that are going to start pulling away from them. And I do believe this Cardiff team is much better than the performances they put in. But I think the ownership's really let them down in terms of taking so long to come up with a solution for a managerial situation that could have been sorted in weeks.
Well, that's why it's so stupid that it took them so long, isn't it, Justin? Because now they've appointed a caretaker manager who, even when he was appointed, the results had already started to take a downturn. And now they're in an awkward position where we're 1 game in and you're like, Omar Reitzer seems to be struggling as Cardiff manager after 1 game in, although, of course, he had a few games before that. And that's why this situation is just completely and utterly bizarre. And the fans are clearly very concerned as well. At full time of this game, the stadium was nearly empty. They were 2-0 down, it is worth saying. But the fact that fans just cleared out so quickly says a lot about the state that Cardiff are in. And you look at the table, they are in the bottom 3. You've got, Plymouth are looking pretty grim right now as well, but Hull are below them. I'd expect them to improve under Ruben Sellers. Oxford are struggling a bit just above them. Portsmouth have improved quite considerably in recent weeks. QPR have improved as well. And there's a 4-point gap between Cardiff and QPR. So when you've got teams below or around Cardiff who are improving and not many others who are struggling as much as them, that's where you get a bit worried about Cardiff and the way they're going in.
a very important variable as well that you need to consider, the fact that teams that are down there, I'm just looking Preston, Luton, Coventry from 14th downwards, other than Narcissus Palach at Stoke. Omar Reeds is the least experienced manager there. That's not a good trait to have when you're fighting relegation, is it? So yeah, very precarious. All I'm saying is Neil Harris is available.
Get him back. Get him back in.
I'm just saying.
I won't rule it out with Cardiff. I think anything's possible. And let's go to Frank Lampard, who lost for the first time as Coventry manager. They were beaten 2-0 away at West Brom. The draw curse has been broken. Justin, West Brom have actually done something different in a game other than just get a point. Remarkable scenes right here.
Arguably, this was their shittest game for a while as well. It was so poor. They were clinical. But I thought Coventry did deserve something. You know, at 1-0 down, they created so many good chances. That actually, you know, I'm going to praise Frank Lampard, because I thought the team reacted really well, and I thought this game probably told him a lot about his team as well. But for West Brom, they seemed to, you know, get that Alex Mowat goal and I wouldn't say sit back, but they absorbed a lot of pressure. I think would be the polite way of saying they sat back. And they rode their luck at times, and they saw it out. They did what they scored early, which is almost like, oh shit, we've scored. We can't draw this game now. We've got to see it out. You know, they go 1-0 ahead, you can't draw. And sort of the mentality they did, and just zapped all quality out of the game.
They only had one shot in normal time of the second half, and that was Colin Grant's goal, which was a remarkable goal in itself. He looks rejuvenated this season, doesn't he? Enjoying his football again. But yeah, it wasn't a great performance by West Brom by any means. They were holding on a bit here. But West Brom are actually now unbeaten in 12 games. Neither Leicester or Ipswich managed a longer unbeaten run than that last season. So it is impressive, I think. But look, I have heard a few murmurings of discontent from West Brom fans about Carlos Corberán during this run, which I just think is insane. So hopefully that simmers that down, because whatever you think of his football, he's West Brom's best manager in a long time, isn't he? So you've just got to trust him and embrace the unbeaten streak, no matter how unconvincing it is. This must be the most unconvincing 12-game unbeaten run any team has ever had in Championship history. It really must be. But yeah, as you alluded to, Justin, Frank Lampard did say afterwards that he thought they shouldn't have lost it, and he's definitely right, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, the opening game, was it against Cardiff? I can't quite remember who it was now. Yeah, they weren't particularly convincing there, but they reacted well against Millwall. Should have come away with more than a 1-0 win, and arguably should have come away with a win here against West Brom as well. You know, I think the positive thing is that the team's creating lots of chances. The chronic issue that Frank Lampard had at both Chelsea and Derby was the reliance on individuals. Now, I know there'll be a lot of teams that do rely on individuals to get you out of games, for example, doing something great, but the sustained creating of chances is really, really important. And I think if the team was in more confidence, or in more of a confident mood, they probably would have put away some of the chances, some of the 4 big chances they created in this game. They didn't. But I think that'd be something that Frank Lampard will work with the team. I don't think it was a highly critical performance from Coventry, deflected goal from Alex Mowat, and then the Colin Grant's against the run of play, sucker punch, and a really good finish from him. So it's just one of those occasions where, frustrating for him, I imagine. But last 2 games, I'm quite surprised. And he deserves praise. They've played very well.
I wouldn't say very well. I think I'd be encouraged, is what I would say if I was a Coventry fan, based off these last 2 games, because they've done well. I wouldn't get too carried away, though, because I think there's still clearly a lot of room for improvement. And the final game we'll discuss, Justin, is Ruben Sellers picking up a point in his first game in charge of Hull City. They conceded an 88th minute equaliser to draw 1-1 with Watford. So close to a win for old Ruben Sellers in his first game, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realise before this game week that Hull were bottom of the table. We sort of just looked at it on Tuesday morning. I was like, oh shit. Yeah. That's not ideal. But yeah, there was certainly positives to take. I thought Regan Slater and Stephen Alzate did relatively well in the middle. Ryan Longman was very lively on the wing. I thought Ruben Sellers was very measured in his post-match press conference as well, because he didn't allow the emotion of conceding late to hurt him. He said that himself. He doesn't want that he doesn't want the emotions to take over. I just think
he's been
very
through a lot
measured,
worse
especially
in the past year and a half, Justin.
I think that's what it is. Yeah, the whole Reading thing's probably completely numbed him to anything that is, unless the club disappears off the face of the earth, that's the only thing that's going to hurt him now in football. So a late goal is nothing. And to be fair, actually, when you're in this situation where you are fighting, all right now we're fighting against relegation, they are down there. You need someone who's been through a hell of a lot, who can come in and just be like, guys, it's all right. This will be fine. Hopefully, yeah. We'll see. You mentioned Chris Beddy's goal. Might be my goal of midweek, actually, because the ball's played across the box. A Hull player completely mishits it and it just hits Bedia and goes in. Might have even come off his arm, but just such a shit goal for a very poor striker. So... That's why it was just quite funny, really. And then when it looks like Ruben Sellers might be celebrating a first win, they concede a pretty avoidable goal. Quadre Bar runs an awfully long way and crosses to Rocco Vata, who's completely free on the edge of the 6-yard box. So while it was a decent first showing for Ruben Sellers, particularly because he's only had a matter of days to work with his players, it's a reminder that there's a fair bit of work to do to get them playing again, Justin, isn't there? And with you, as you say, with them being bottom of the table, yeah, sure, he's been in much more difficult circumstances in the past couple of years, but he's got his hands full, hasn't he, old Ruben? Yeah, he has. But again, I think I believe in him. I really do. It's just I don't know. There's so many question marks about this whole team. You mentioned Chris Bedia not being hugely convincing. I do think the strength is in this squad is the back line, despite them conceding a lot of goals. I do think Luke Hall has been very consistent this season. Charlie Hughes has stood out as well. There is quality, and again, Regan Slater, I do love him as a player. So yeah, there is definite players that he can work with. Just going forwards, I know we bang the bell all the time about Balumi and Liam Miller getting injured, but that team is devoid of quality going forward. So it really is, and that's the thing that does concern me. But January's only a few weeks away, which, if you can chip away at results until then, recruit a couple of extra faces in the final third, then yeah, I think Ruben Sellers has got the ability to get Hull out of this mess.
It's incredible how extraordinary those circumstances are, isn't it? When you're neither banging the drum or ringing the bell, but you're banging the bell, in Justin Peach's words. That's how incredible the situation is at Hull City. and just finally, we were going to discuss this game, but we haven't really got time to talk about it now. But I wanted to give a mention for Walter Berger's handball in the Luton Stoke game. Luton won that game 2-1 in the Nathan Jones derby. Justin, great win for Luton, who have remarkably got a pretty ridiculous record at Kenilworth Road now, but are shocking away from home. And that continues to be the case here. But Walter Berger in this game, it's one of the funniest handballs I've ever seen, Justin. Goes to the ground after a challenge and then blatantly passes it through his legs with his hand. Nothing's given. It's genius, Justin.
The fact that the only body parts he's allowed to use in football are his feet, which are pointing in the ref's direction. How did the ref think the ball left?
No, that's not true at all. You're allowed to use every body part apart from your arms.
Well, no, it's true. What I mean is the only body part that could have possibly created that trajectory with the ball were his arms, and you can't use your arms in football. So, and obviously the feet are pointing in the ref's direction. So what does the ref think he's used? Like, the only discernible thing he could have possibly done is move it with his penis, and it's just impossible because he's lying on top of it. So how did the ball leave his body? Referee, come on.
Penis pass. That's how he did it, with the classic old penis pass. Yeah, just one of my favourite moments of midweek, and possibly my favourite moments of the season, because how the referee hasn't spotted that, I have absolutely no idea. But great stuff from Walter Berger. Probably the best thing he's done this season in a Stoke shirt as well, because he's pretty underwhelming, to be honest. So there we go, ladies and gents. This has been the Second Tier Podcast, and this has been a roundup of all the midweek action from across the Championship. We'll, of course, be back again tomorrow with the preview show brought to you by SBK to have a look ahead to the weekend and make some bloody predictions. So we look forward to seeing you then for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.